My family said I was too ugly for family photos and isolated me, so I married a secret millionaire and let them beg from the sidelines as I rose. I'm Anna, 28, female, and I've always been the ugly duckling of my family. My sister, Macy, 32, female, has always been the golden child, blonde, tall, conventionally beautiful, married to a successful lawyer named David. Meanwhile, I've struggled with severe acne scarring from my teens, am shorter and heavier, and have always felt like the family disappointment. Growing up, my parents made it clear who the favorite was. Macy got the nice clothes, the college fund, the encouragement. I got hand-me-downs and lectures about making the best of what God gave me. When Macy married David 3 years ago, it was like they'd won the lottery. He's handsome, wealthy, drives a BMW, and treats my parents like royalty. They practically worship the ground he walks on. The incident that broke my heart happened 2 weeks before Christmas last year. I was so excited to introduce my boyfriend Jake to the family. We'd been dating for 8 months and I was head over heels in love. Jake is kind, funny, works as a veterinarian, and somehow sees past all my physical flaws to love me for who I am inside. To give you some context about how differently Macy and I were treated growing up, when Macy turned 16, our parents threw her a huge party at the country club. They rented out the whole ballroom, hired a DJ, and invited half the town. The photos from that night still hang in their living room, Macy in a gorgeous white dress surrounded by friends, looking like a princess. When I turned 16, I got a small cake at home and a gift card to Target. Mom said they couldn't afford a big party that year even though Dad had just gotten a promotion. Macy later told me that Mom didn't want to waste money on a party for me since I probably wouldn't have many friends to invite anyway. She was right. I only had 2 close friends, both of whom my family treated politely but distantly whenever they came over. The favoritism extended to everything. Macy got a car for her 17th birthday, a cute little Honda Civic in her favorite color. I got driving lessons and was told I could share the old family sedan when needed, which usually meant I had to ask permission and explain where I was going. Macy got her college tuition paid in full. I got lectures about earning my way and took out student loans that I'm still paying off. Even our childhood bedrooms told the story. Macy's room was redecorated 3 times during high school because she kept changing her mind about colors and themes. My room had the same faded purple walls from middle school until I moved out. When I asked about repainting it, Mom said we should focus on Macy's needs first since she was the one bringing friends over. The worst part was how they talked about my appearance from such a young age. I remember being maybe 12 years old, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, trying to figure out how to deal with my first pimples, and Mom walking in and sighing, "Oh, honey, we really need to get you to a dermatologist." Macy never had these problems, as if I'd chosen to have bad skin just to inconvenience her. When my acne got worse in high school, they did take me to a dermatologist, but they complained about the cost constantly. $200 a month for Anna's face medicine, Dad would mutter when paying bills. Meanwhile, they never questioned spending money on Macy's highlights, manicures, or the personal trainer she wanted before prom. The comments about my weight started early too. Macy was naturally tall and thin, while I inherited Dad's shorter, stockier build. By middle school, Mom was making comments about my portions at dinner and suggesting I take up jogging like Macy. Macy would sometimes chime in with helpful suggestions about my clothes or makeup, always delivered with that fake sweet voice that made it clear she thought she was doing me a favor. High school was brutal. Macy was homecoming queen, prom queen, student council president, basically everything I wasn't. She dated the star quarterback, had dozens of friends, and our parents glowed with pride at every school event. I was in the science club and the animal rescue volunteer group, but those achievements never seemed to matter. When I won a regional science fair, Dad's only comment was, "That's nice, honey," before immediately asking Macy about her upcoming cheerleading competition the day Macy announced her engagement to David. You would have thought she'd cured cancer. Mom cried happy tears, Dad opened champagne, and they immediately started planning this elaborate engagement party. They called relatives, booked the country club again, and spent weeks fussing over every detail. Macy's ring was gorgeous, a huge diamond that caught the light from across the room. When I started dating Jake, I was nervous about introducing him to my family, but I hoped things might be different now that I was an adult. I thought maybe they'd matured, Maybe they'd see that I deserved happiness too. I spent weeks building up the courage to invite him to family dinner, practicing what I'd say about his job and his interests. I should have known better. I called Mom to confirm Christmas dinner plans, and that's when she dropped the bomb. "Honey," she said in that fake gentle voice she uses when she's about to hurt my feelings, "maybe you shouldn't come for Christmas this year." I was stunned. "What? Why?" "Well, David will be here, and you know how he gets around certain people. We don't want your face ruining the family photos or making anyone uncomfortable." Before I could even process that gut punch, Dad got on the phone. "Some people are just too distracting, sweetie, you understand." Then Macy chimed in from the background. "He gets really uncomfortable around ugly women." "It's not personal, Anna, it's just how he is." I hung up and cried for hours. Jake found me sobbing on the couch and held me while I told him what happened. He was furious, absolutely livid, but I begged him not to make a scene. I was used to this treatment, even if it still hurt. We spent Christmas alone together, and honestly, it was one of the best Christmases I'd ever had. Jake cooked dinner, we watched movies, and he proposed to me that night with his grandmother's ring. I said yes through happy tears, finally feeling like someone truly wanted me. That Christmas was a turning point for me in so many ways. Jake had suggested we create our own tradition since my family had essentially exiled me. He made this incredible dinner: prime rib, garlic mashed potatoes, green bean casserole from scratch, and homemade rolls that smelled like heaven. He clearly put thought and effort into making the day special for us. We exchanged simple gifts. I got him a vintage veterinary textbook I'd found at an antique shop, and he got me a beautiful necklace with a small sapphire pendant. "It matches your eyes," he said, and I almost cried because no one had ever noticed the color of my eyes before, let alone complimented them. But the real gift came that evening when we were sitting by the fireplace in his apartment, surrounded by wrapping paper and full from dinner. Jake got quiet and took my hands. "Anna," he said, "I know this year has been hard for you with your family situation. I know they've hurt you in ways that cut deep. But I need you to know something. You are the most incredible woman I've ever met. You're kind to every animal that comes into the clinic, even the ones that try to bite you. You remember the names of all the elderly clients and always ask about their grandchildren. You cry during sad movies and laugh at my terrible dad jokes. You're beautiful inside and out, and I can't imagine my life without you." Then he got down on one knee and pulled out this vintage ring, a simple but elegant setting with a diamond that had belonged to his grandmother. "My grandmother would have loved you," he said. "She always said I should marry someone who had a good heart above everything else. Will you marry me, Anna?" I said yes through tears, and we spent the rest of the evening planning our future together. Jake told me more about his family that night. How his grandparents had started the veterinary business with nothing. How his parents had built it into something successful while always staying humble and grounded. He said his family valued character over everything else and that they were going to love me. I couldn't help but compare this to how David had proposed to Macy. From what I'd heard, it was this elaborate production at an expensive restaurant with photographers hiding in the bushes and a ring that cost more than most people's cars. It was all for show, all about appearances and impressing people. Jake's proposal was intimate and heartfelt, focused on our love for each other rather than making a spectacle. But here's where it gets interesting, Reddit. Jake isn't just any veterinarian. His family owns a chain of high-end veterinary clinics across 3 states. His father is a renowned veterinary surgeon, and his mother is a successful businesswoman. Jake himself is brilliant. He has a doctorate in veterinary medicine, speaks 3 languages, and volunteers at animal rescue organizations. He's also incredibly handsome in a quiet, understated way. Think less flashy lawyer, more ruggedly handsome country vet who saves puppies for a living. The thing is, Jake dresses simply: jeans, flannel shirts, work boots. He drives a practical pickup truck because of his job. He's humble about his family's wealth and success. If you saw him on the street, you might think he was just a regular working guy, which is exactly how he likes it. He says it helps him connect with his clients and their pets. I never told my family any of this because, frankly, after years of their treatment, I'd stopped sharing details about my life with them. They never asked about Jake beyond his name, never showed interest in meeting him, never cared about my happiness. So they had no idea who I was actually marrying. The wedding was small and beautiful. Jake's family welcomed me with open arms. They're genuinely kind people who judged me on my character, not my appearance. Jake's mom even helped me find a dress that made me feel beautiful for the first time in my life. His dad walked me down the aisle since my own father couldn't be bothered to show up. They were all busy that weekend apparently. The contrast between Jake's family and mine was stark. From the moment I met them, his parents, Margaret and Robert, invited me over for dinner just 2 weeks after Jake and I got engaged. I was terrified. Years of my family's treatment had left me expecting judgment and criticism from parental figures. Instead, Margaret greeted me at the door with a warm hug and immediately complimented my earrings. Simple studs Jake had given me. Robert shook my hand firmly and said he'd heard wonderful things about me from Jake. During dinner, they asked thoughtful questions about my work at the animal shelter, my college experience, and my interests. They listened to my answers with genuine interest, never once making me feel like I needed to prove my worth. When I mentioned that my own parents wouldn't be attending the wedding, Margaret's face fell. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry," she said. "But you know what? Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes we get to choose our family, and we choose you." Robert nodded and added, "It would be my honor to walk you down the aisle if you'd like." I started crying right there at their dinner table. Jake's sister Amy was equally welcoming. She's a teacher, married with 2 young kids, and she immediately started including me in sister activities: shopping, trips, girls' nights, family barbecues. She never once made a comment about my appearance or compared me to anyone else. When I mentioned being nervous about wedding dress shopping, she said, "We're going to find you something that makes you feel like the gorgeous bride you are," and she meant it. The wedding dress shopping experience was everything I'd dreamed of as a little girl but never thought I'd have. Margaret, Amy, and 2 of my close friends from college came with me. They cheered when I found the dress, a simple but elegant A-line gown that somehow made me look graceful and beautiful. Margaret cried when she saw me in it and said, "Jake is going to fall in love with you all over again." The contrast with Macy's wedding dress experience was painful to remember. She'd taken Mom and 3 of her friends to a high-end boutique, trying on dresses that cost more than my car. Mom had posted dozens of photos on Facebook of Macy in various gowns, gushing about her princess and her perfect figure. When I'd mentioned wanting to go wedding dress shopping, Mom had sighed and said, "Well, we'll have to find something suitable." The implication was clear. I shouldn't expect to look like a fairy tale princess. But in that bridal shop with Jake's family, I did feel like a princess. For the first time in my life, I felt truly beautiful. The wedding day itself was perfect. Jake's family had offered to pay for a larger wedding, but we both wanted something intimate and meaningful. We held it at a beautiful garden venue with about 50 guests, mostly Jake's family and friends, plus my college friends and a few coworkers from the animal shelter. Jake's cousin officiated the ceremony, making it personal and heartfelt. When Jake saw me walking down the aisle on Robert's arm, he started crying. Later, he told me it wasn't just because I looked beautiful, but because seeing his dad give me away felt like the final piece of our family puzzle falling into place. The reception was full of laughter, good food, and dancing. Jake's grandmother's friends told stories about her and how she would have loved me. His college buddies gave embarrassing speeches about what a good guy he was and how happy they were that he found someone who loved him for the right reasons. My college friends gave speeches about how they'd never seen me as happy as I was with Jake. There wasn't a single moment where I felt judged, criticized, or not good enough. Everyone there was celebrating our love and our future together. Meanwhile, my biological family spent that weekend at some lake house posting photos on Facebook of their relaxing family getaway. Macy posted a picture of herself in a bikini with a caption, "Family time is the best time." Mom commented, "My beautiful girls." Except I wasn't there, so apparently I didn't count as one of her girls anymore. It stung, but Jake's family kept me so busy with love and celebration that I barely had time to dwell on it. We had a photographer friend take some gorgeous photos. Jake looked incredibly handsome in his suit, and somehow, I actually looked happy and radiant. The photos captured pure joy and love. I posted a few photos on Facebook, mostly for my college friends and coworkers to see. I'm not normally one to post much, but I was just so happy and wanted to share that happiness with people who actually cared about me. That was 6 months ago. Yesterday, my phone started ringing off the hook. It started with Macy calling and screaming, "Why didn't you tell us your husband is rich?" Apparently David had been scrolling through Facebook, probably looking at other women, knowing him, and came across my wedding photos. He saw Jake in his perfectly tailored suit, recognized the expensive watch Jake wears that belonged to his grandfather, and somehow put together that this wasn't just some country vet. David did some digging, found Jake's LinkedIn, found articles about the family business, and found out that Jake is not only successful in his own right but comes from serious money. The kind of money that makes David's lawyer's salary look like pocket change. But here's the kicker, and this is where I almost feel bad for Macy. Almost. David apparently went ballistic when he realized that his wife's ugly sister had married someone not only more successful than him but better looking too. According to Macy, who was sobbing hysterically, David started comparing her to me, saying things like, "Your sister managed to land a doctor from a wealthy family, and she's not even pretty. What does that say about you?" The man who couldn't stand to be around me because of my appearance suddenly couldn't stop talking about how my husband was out of my league and wondering what Jake saw in me that he didn't see in Macy. Macy said David had been acting strange for days, asking questions about Jake, looking at our wedding photos over and over, and muttering about missing opportunities and settling too quickly. Then, yesterday morning, David apparently had a complete meltdown. He told Macy that he'd married the wrong sister, and that he wanted a divorce. Macy came home from work to find divorce papers on the kitchen table, and David's belongings gone. She called me crying, begging me to talk to Jake to see if Jake had any single friends, asking why I never told them about Jake's family. The same sister who said I was too ugly to come to Christmas was now desperate for my help. But wait, there's more. Mom called next, suddenly very interested in meeting Jake and welcoming him to the family properly. She kept asking when we were going to visit, saying how sorry she was that they missed the wedding, and how they'd love to host us for dinner. Dad called after that, talking about how family is everything and how they'd always supported my choices. He actually had the audacity to say he'd always known I'd find someone special and that he was proud of me for landing such a catch. The phone calls kept coming. Aunts and uncles I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to reconnect. Cousins asked for Jake's business card for their pets. Family friends wanted to be Facebook friends again after years of ignoring me. But the most pathetic call came from Macy again, this time asking if Jake was hiring at his clinics and whether he might be interested in dating a recently single woman who's always loved animals. Yes, Reddit, my sister, who called me too ugly for Christmas dinner, actually asked if my husband might want to date her after her divorce. I told her Jake was happily married and hung up. Jake thinks this whole situation is hilarious, by the way. He's been watching me field these calls with amusement, occasionally making comments like, "Weren't these the people who were too busy to come to our wedding?" His family thinks it's ridiculous too. His mom said, "People like that are exactly why Jake keeps his background quiet." But here's what really gets me. They're not sorry for how they treated me. They're not apologizing for excluding me from Christmas or calling me ugly or making me feel worthless for years. They're just sorry they missed out on connecting with Jake's money and status. The phone calls that followed were absolutely surreal. Each conversation revealed just how shallow and calculating my family really was. Macy's second call was the worst. She was alternating between rage and desperation, demanding to know why I'd hidden Jake's background from them. "We're your family," she screamed. "You should have told us he was rich. We could have been networking with his family this whole time." I pointed out that they'd never shown any interest in Jake as a person, never asked about his work beyond his job title, never wanted to meet him. "Why would I share details about someone you clearly didn't care about?" I asked. "That's not the point," Macy shot back. "You knew we could have benefited from knowing his family. Dad could have referred clients to his father's clinics. I could have made connections for David's firm." "You're so selfish, Anna." The irony was incredible. I was selfish for not leveraging my relationship for their benefit, but they weren't selfish for excluding me from family events because of my appearance. Mom's calls were somehow even worse because of how fake they sounded. She kept using this syrupy sweet voice, like she was talking to a child. "Sweetie, we just want to be part of your happiness. We're so proud of you for finding such a wonderful man. When can we meet him properly? I want to cook his favorite meal." When I reminded her that she told me not to come to Christmas because my face would ruin things, she had the audacity to say, "Oh honey, you know I didn't mean that the way it sounded." I was just trying to protect you from David's rudeness. You know how some men can be uncomfortable around, well, different types of people. Different types of people? I repeated. You mean ugly people, Mom. That's what you said. Don't put words in my mouth, Anna. I never said that. But I had witnesses. Jake had heard the entire phone call that day. So had Macy, who had literally agreed that David got uncomfortable around ugly women. Dad's approach was different but equally transparent. He tried to bond with me over Jake's success, talking about how he'd always known I was smart enough to recognize a good man, and how successful people tend to find each other. He kept steering the conversation toward Jake's business, asking about expansion plans and whether they needed legal counsel. When I pointed out that he'd never shown interest in my judgment before, he got defensive. That's not fair, Anna. I've always supported your decisions. Maybe I haven't always expressed it the way you wanted, but I've always wanted the best for you. The best for me was being excluded from Christmas, I asked. That was a complicated situation, he said. David was going through some personal issues, and we thought it would be better for everyone if we kept things simple that year. The rewriting of history was incredible. Suddenly, my exclusion from Christmas wasn't about my appearance. It was about David's personal issues and keeping things simple. Macy kept texting me, alternating between blaming me for keeping secrets and begging me to help her get back at David somehow. She actually said, "We're sisters, we should stick together." The same sister who agreed I was too ugly to be around her husband. In one particularly unhinged text conversation, Macy wrote, "You dawn and understand what it's like to have your whole life fall apart. David was my security, my future, my status in this town. Now everyone's talking about how he left me for some paralegal. I need Jake's help to get back at him. His family has connections, they could ruin David's reputation completely." When I didn't respond, she followed up with, "Fine, be selfish, but remember, when Jake gets tired of playing house with you and realizes he could do better, don't come crying to me. Rich men don't stay with ugly women forever, Anna. He'll figure that out eventually." That text actually made me laugh. Even in her desperation, Macy couldn't help but try to tear me down. It was like she was incapable of seeing me as anything other than the inferior sister. The extended family calls were equally revealing. Aunts and uncles who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly wanted to catch up. They asked probing questions about Jake's family business, whether we were planning to expand into their areas, whether Jake needed local connections for anything. My cousin Lisa, who had literally unfriended me on Facebook after my high school graduation, because she thought I was bringing down the family's image in photos, called to ask if Jake was hiring. She'd apparently just graduated from veterinary technician school and thought it would be perfect if we could work together. The most pathetic call came from Macy again, this time asking if Jake was hiring at his clinics and whether he might be interested in dating a recently single woman who's always loved animals. Yes, Reddit, my sister, who called me too ugly for Christmas dinner, actually asked if my husband might want to date her after her divorce. I told her Jake was happily married and hung up. Jake thinks this whole situation is hilarious, by the way. He's been watching me field these calls with amusement, occasionally making comments like, "Weren't these the people who were too busy to come to our wedding?" His family thinks it's ridiculous too. His mom said, "People like that are exactly why Jake keeps his background quiet." But here's what really gets me. They're not sorry for how they treated me. They're not apologizing for excluding me from Christmas, or calling me ugly, or making me feel worthless for years. They're just sorry they missed out on connecting with Jake's money and status.